Hey beautiful people, welcome to another episode of Messy Thriving. Today we're going to talk about a little seahorse shaped part of your brain called your hippocampus. And one of the things we're going to look at is what that little seahorse shaped part of your brain triggers in you, reactions and other things. So I guess for me, one of the things I think about when I think about my hippocampus is actually needles. So when I was 12, my mum and dad and one of my siblings, I can't remember which one now, were in America for a month for the work that dad was doing at the time. And my two gorgeous grandmothers looked after me. They did it. 2 weeks was with my dad's mum, and then the last 2 weeks was with my mum's mum. And her nickname, she didn't like it too much, so we wouldn't say it in front of her. My dad gave it to her, was Big Bad Al, because her name was Alice. Now, my grandma was only about 5'5", but she packed a punch in terms of personality. And I wasn't scared of her all the time, but there was definitely moments. This little grey-haired, curly-haired little dynamo. And when she was looking after me, we lived on 5 acres. I was mucking around on the tank. I can't remember what I was doing, but I jumped from the tank onto the timber supports around it, and a nail went straight through my foot, through the timber into my foot. And I pulled it off. I don't know if you've ever stood a nail, but you kind of like dragged it off, and I immediately went, I can't let my grandmother know because it won't be good. I didn't even know why it wouldn't be good. I just know that wasn't a great idea. So I hid it from her. And I got away with it too for about 4 or 5 days. But I remember one morning before school, I had my uniform on. I'd just come out of the bathroom and my foot really hurt, but I was hoping to wait till mum and dad came home before I had someone look at it. But my grandmother saw me limping. And when she saw me limping, she then took my shoe off, and then she decided that she would get a needle and she would scrape out all the pus because my foot had become infected. So she got my grandmother, my grandfather, and my auntie to hold me down. She literally got me to bite a pillow because she knew it would hurt, and then she scraped all the pus out, which to say was a fairly traumatic experience for this little 12-year-old. And so since that time, just the thought of needles freaks me the hell out. I hate them. Well, I have hated them up until this point in my life, and just the thought of I can't watch needles going into other people. I may have fainted a couple of times getting blood tests, that sort of stuff. I get triggered. I get an emotional response just thinking about needles. And I even end up having a number of stitches in my knees, in my chin, other places, and I always get pretty tense, pretty freaked out whenever I come around needles. I can't watch my kids getting needles, my wife getting needles. I hate catheters. Just like I feel it physically, right? Well, for me, that actually goes back to my hippocampus. A hippocampus is something I'm going to read it out to you. It's caused by an event that we're stored when there's a passion or emotion plus a really strong purpose or meaning. So when those two things come together, we store those memories in our hippocampus. It can be a positive memory, it can be a negative memory. And so for me, needles have that association, that trigger, that sense of fear, of pain, of trauma for me. So I've really had to work in the last few years changing my thoughts, feelings and actions, and that's a different tool we're going to come back to at another time. But often how we see this played out as at work is not through people having trauma about needles, but more people's, because I overreact to needles. I'm aware of that. But what do you overreact to? Have you ever overreacted to a person and just not like them? And you don't really know why you don't like them, or you don't really know why you have that negative feeling about them. It could be, and one of my mentors, the guy that wrote all the material we're going through right now, a guy called Ford Taylor, he talks about the fact that you could have had a significant reaction because you are triggered by a certain person in your life because of what they do, might be because of the way they look. If you had had a traumatic experience with a guy that's 6'2", blonde hair, in a blue jacket, you might meet a guy fitting that description at some time in your life, and it's not the guy that actually did the traumatic thing to you, but just the appearance of them triggers that negative reaction. Have you ever had an overreaction to a person and you're just not sure why? Hippocampus explains part of that. Or sometimes we might trigger painful events or trigger something that, so for me, another one is teachers. Growing up dyslexic, often felt really devalued by teachers. I had some great teachers, but I also had some pretty disgusting experiences, to be honest, with teachers who really devalued me, didn't understand my dyslexia, and so yeah, were pretty horrible because they just assumed I wasn't trying or didn't care even when I was. So that was pretty traumatic for me. So even to this day, I have a challenge around perceiving teachers with anything but pain. So I even have some teachers that I really like, or friends of mine that are teachers, and I've had to work really hard at overcoming that feeling or emotion just by being around teachers that I don't trust, just because there's an association or a trigger to pain in my past. So how does that affect you in your world with either your work partners, maybe friends and family? It's good to be aware that we actually all have stuff stored in our hippocampus. So maybe that overreaction that you got from a friend, family, or a fellow co-worker wasn't because of what you did, but you actually triggered pain in their past. And the clearest way to see this is when it's an overreaction. The thing you did was much smaller than the reaction that you got from people. Or maybe the reaction you gave to someone was much bigger than the actual event that took place. Often that's when something is stored in our hippocampus and we have that stored memory, often negative, that someone triggers in our hippocampus and we get the explosion. So it's really cool to think about there's always something in people's hippocampus that you know nothing about. And it gives us grace for working for other people, understanding they're not necessarily being destructive because they're choosing it, but maybe because they're triggered. Also helps you understand that sometimes you do destructive things, sometimes out of when your pain is triggered. So this is a great little tool. It's a great little tool to have in your pocket to know that sometimes the destructive things you do or the destructive things that other people do is not based on the event itself, but based on a triggered emotion stored in your hippocampus. So thanks for watching today. Hope this really helped. Leave any thoughts and comments. Tell me where you think I might have been wrong or ways this might have worked for you. And we'll see you next time.